Vermont set state records for opioid overdose deaths in both 2020 and 2021. Public health officials have linked the surge in substance use in part to the isolation and economic shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. But Vermonters are still dying at elevated rates even now. Congress plays a major role in funding recovery and prevention programs. Where would you focus resources to address the overdose crisis? And we'll start with you, Mr. Madden.
So this is a pretty near and dear subject to me. It's pretty painful, actually. My brother died earlier this year from his opioid addiction, which was set off through prescribed use of the so-called non-addictive painkillers. And I think almost every family in Vermont has been affected by something similar. And most everyone has probably also heard of this famous experiment related to this subject by a Canadian scientist named Alexander Bruce, who found that animals with access to really addictive substances would starve themselves to death because they couldn't break the grip of the impulse to feed their addiction. And what most people don't hear about that experiment is that there was a control group of animals and that they had the same access to addictive substances, but they also had healthy social and physical environments, so-called rat parks. And these animals didn't become addicted. And I'm not saying my brother is exempt from personal responsibility for the way his life turned out, but we can't understand his life or really anything absent context. And the context of the opioid epidemic is that the physical and social environments we live in are no longer providing protection from despair and lack of purpose that fuels addiction. And I'd like to approach our response to this crisis not only by providing federal support for long-term rehab facilities and the kind of services that support organizations like Jenna's Promise and Johnson are providing to people once they leave rehab, but to also think bigger and further upstream and instill into our education system the kind of experiences, the kinds of rites of passage that ground people's lives in purpose and connection. Because the best way to deal and prevent addiction is with connection and purpose.